Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to a special episode of Not Too Comic Book. If you're unfamiliar, Not Too Comic Book is a show slash podcast of sorts where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. Now, what makes this episode special in comparison to any other episode is typically I break this down, by episode by every show. Rather than putting them all together as one thing, I end up dividing them up. It's like, okay, there's an episode of Supergirl this day, the next day an episode of Flash. I record them and have them put up like that instead of doing it all at once. Well, this week I'm actually going to be doing it that way, of putting them all together at once. Obviously, I'm going to be recording them the way I normally do, and that's the night of me watching everything. At the time of me recording this, it's actually like Tuesday morning at this time because I've kind of been recording things a little late today. But so basically, normally this would be going up like Tuesday afternoon, but because of the way I'm doing things, it won't be going up until Friday, because that way I'm going to record everything as I normally do, break it down by episode. That's the crossover event in general, my thoughts about it, what it might mean for the future. I know it's going to be weird doing it like that because it's like the fact of the matter is I've already kind of established like I'm going to be recording the other stuff in the future, so I'm going to be commenting on stuff that I might get the answer to the next day. So it's going to be past me commenting on stuff that like future me might have an answer to, of like, oh, how this plays out and whatnot. So that just, I don't know, I think it's kind of an interesting thing. Like I said, I've said it before, it's kind of a test to see how things work out. So do note that I will be breaking things down episode by episode. Once we get to the end of the week with Legends of Tomorrow, I'll kind of do an overall like discussion of being like how I felt about it in general, and my thoughts on it just all together. So but let's get started. For the first segment, we're going to talk about Supergirl. A very good episode. So much to go through. First of all, we end up finding out what Medusa is. Essentially, it's a basically alien eradicating virus weapon that apparently is actually Kryptonian based. That's what Cyber Superman got from the Fortress of Solitude. It ended up being something that actually Kara's dad had actually made, because originally it was supposed to be made kind of as a defense mechanism against invaders to wipe them out, but now it's being used on Earth by Cadmus to wipe out all aliens. Because Mon-El was there at the beginning, he tried to fight off Cyber Superman, but kind of got his ass handed to him, and by the moment he came back in, all the aliens had died, and it was just like very heartbreaking, because it's like you go from that, because that was right after the whole like Thanksgiving scene. You had Jimmy and Wynn being like, okay, we got to tell Kara. It's like, no, you're going to tell Kara? No, I'm going to tell Kara. I'm the one in the suit. But he's kind of like, I'm the one that kind of comes up with the tech and everything. He's like, no, it's me in the suit. I have to tell her. And then they tell Alex, okay, we're thinking about telling Kara the truth. And he's like, I'm be the one to tell. And then Alex is like, no, I have a bomb of my own to drop. And it's like, you're not going to deter me away from that. The Mon-El shows up and he's trying to be all sweet and everything. He's like, oh, I got stuffing, and it's stuffing from his bed, even instead of the food. Just Mon-El just being Mon-El. And then Kara's just kind of weirded out by the fact that he's acting so nice, especially the way he's kind of buttering up to their mom. And then she's kind of like, oh, he's totally hitting on mom. And then her mom had to set her straight. It's like, no, he's just trying to like cozy up to me because he likes you. It's so obvious. And Kara's like, what? No, he doesn't. There's no way. And then it's kind of like, I don't know, you kind of see the look in her face like, oh, because I guess she never really thought about it, which, that's what we were kind of picking up last episode, is the fact that there was kind of something there, so. But this particular virus will work on everyone except Kryptonians, which begs the question, what was Cadmus planning to do about the Kryptonian? I guess it kind of like had Cyber Superman as like a secret weapon, so it's like, I guess it's a lot easier to deal with two aliens than it is like a whole bunch of aliens spread all around, because I'm guessing it's like if they Cadmus wipes out all the aliens, I guess they figured like humanity would take this opportunity. It's like, oh, there's only two left, let's join together and stop them. I mean, because it's like it doesn't work on Kryptonians. So, but the process ended up ending with Mon-El getting sick, so he had to kind of stay in quarantine, which we had that sweet moment of him and Kara kind of playing that board game. It sounds like it might have been Monopoly, it might have been something else, but nevertheless, it's just like, she's like, so my mom kind of brought out this point that you might like me, and he's like, wait, what? He's like, I don't get that. What does that mean? He's like, she's like, I'm like, crush, what? That you want to mate with me? He's like, what? It's something like that. You see all the type of girls that kind of hit on me and everything. I surround myself. It's just like, okay, fine. You didn't have to put it like that. Because I guess he's just too afraid to admit how he really feels. Even later on in the episode, because in his kind of state of being sick and dying and everything, he kisses Kara and just telling her how beautiful she is. Because one of the things he had said earlier in the episode was that he was thankful for her because it's like out of anyone in the world that could have found him, it was Kara, and he considers himself lucky that he was found by her. But he kissed her. I mean, but later on in the episode, it's kind of like, oh yeah, both of them kind of pretend like it didn't happen. At first, she was like, oh, are we going to talk about that? And Mono was like, talk about what? And she's like, oh, never mind. And you were drooling. That's all there was to it. And you can tell that he definitely remembers. He just was too scared to say anything because I guess in some level, I guess because it's kind of a situation of, I guess he likes things as they are now, and he's afraid that if she knows the truth or whatever, then it might ruin his chances with her. Like it might ruin what they already have, and he doesn't want to take that chance, I would assume. So maybe that, or just maybe he's actually never actually, I don't know. I can't really say that because like the whole situation when he first popped up in this, working at Catco, going at it with, Kat's new assistant at that point in time. So it's kind of, well, Jimmy's at that time because Kat had already left at that time. But, it's kind of like, so it's not like being around women. It's just kind of a new thing to him. But maybe like for him, it's never been an emotional thing. Maybe this is the first time he's ever had feelings for someone. So maybe that's why it's a little hard for him because, like I said, maybe he doesn't want to just screw things up. This episode also brought up the fact is that Kara has to deal with the factors of constantly being disappointed by her parents. Because it's like every time she learns more and more about her parents, it's like she realizes that they weren't necessarily good. I mean, a big part of last season was finding out like her mom wasn't the good person that she thought she was. It's like her mom didn't handle things the best way, and as you can see, her dad didn't either. I mean, because like for her, it's like, what's so different between my parents and Cadmus? Is my parents literally made a virus to wipe out other aliens from coming to their planet, and it's like literally Cadmus is doing the same thing, trying to get rid of other invaders to Earth, like only keeping human beings around and stuff like that. So it puts her in a very interesting position, like, because it's always one thing because it's like in your eyes, your parents are your hero. And especially for Kara, she idolized them, always thought they were on the side of right. But now it's like she finds herself questioning that. She's like, is death and destruction my legacy? But John's telling her, is like, no, you are your family's legacy. All the good things that you do, like the people you protect, the people you save, is proof of like the legacy you carry. That's the will that you carry on, the will to save people. Because the fact of the matter is, we don't know exactly the certain circumstances that they were under to cause that. I mean, who's to say that her dad didn't have his arm twisted, that basically it was kind of not really his decision, it was kind of like a group council decision or something like that kind of had to force his hand. It's kind of, I mean, and it also, because it also comes down to circumstances, because fear is a big motivator. I mean, it's like that's the reason why Cadmus does what they do, out of fear, because they believe that aliens will be the end of the world. It's like, oh, we let them in, it's just going to mean our destruction and our extinction. So that type of fear, it's understandable. Everyone has fear of like, the unknown. So you cut them some slack there, because it's like, if you were to put it in earthling terms, they're only human. They're normal. They're not omnipotent, they're not gods, they're just regular people who are just trying to do the best that they can at the end of the day. And speaking of Cadmus in this whole situation, that was kind of something that Kara tried to learn from Lena about, like first as just Kara trying to learn some information, and Lena kind of makes it seem like, well, she's like, her and her mom don't always kind of get along. She's like, well, what did your mom feel about the whole, like, changing Lex Corp into L Corp? Does she support the things that you're trying to do? She's like, I would hope so. They're good things. So I would hope my mom would. But then we got to see the real conversation between Lena and Lillian, where it's kind of Lillian just kind of like, oh, you called me here. It's been a while. Because apparently they haven't talked since Lex's sentencing, apparently, when he was in court or whatever. And basically, she starts bringing up stuff, asking her mom like what she's kind of up to and stuff like that. Her mom's not really giving her a response. She's like, she actually bluntly states, like, the fact is like, I'm your adopted daughter. You have never let me forget that. Lex is always your favorite. And she was like, yeah, but you are always your dad's favorite. And it's just kind of like, and I guess in a sense you could look at it, that's why her and Lex bond so much, because I guess more so that blood relation. The fact is that reason why they kind of fake the same, because it's like, the fact of the matter is Lex is kind of like a mass murderer and stuff like that. He kind of caused like lots and lots of problems, hurt a lot of people just because of his own idealism of what is right. It's like, to stop this great evil, it's like you have to make sacrifices, and it's like, and there was even a moment where it's just kind of like Lena was kind of like, oh no, Lillian was kind of like, oh, I don't know anything about this, and I don't know what you're talking about. And then Lena's like, I know you're lying. And she's like, oh, and how is that? How do you know that? She's like, you told me you love me, and we both know that's a lie. I was like, that's so heartbreaking. That's a little too real. That hurt. That was like, oh man, that's hurtful. And you see it on her mom's face. It seems like her mom does want to try and make things work with Lena, but it's just like a difference of opinion about certain things. There was even part later on in the episode where Kara came to tell her, like, well, as Supergirl, she came to warn Lena, it's like, your mom's behind Cadmus and bad. And Lena's like, I know my mom's a handful, but there's no way she's behind such a big group like that, trying to like genocide a whole species, you know, wiping out aliens and stuff like that. It's like, for one, you know, your mom's not all that she's cracked up to be, but it's like, is it really that much of a stretch to really believe that? I mean, it's like your brother, your adopted brother is like, he sure as heck was kind of like that. So is it that much of a stretch to believe your mom is? But at the same time, I guess it's because it's kind of like, you kind of isolate. You're kind of like, well, Lex is his own thing. My mom's like, she's not the most attentive mom, but she might be cold hearted, but she never go to that extreme. It's like, you know, kind of going against Supergirl, going like, oh, it's just that S on your chest. Y'all have such a big problem with my family. The fact of the matter is, it's like, first it was Lex, you know, with your cousin, and then now you're talking about it's my mom, and who's next on the list? Me? When will you turn on me? And it's like, then Kara's like, you're nothing like your family. She's like, I have a good judge of character. Your mom and your brother are a lot of like, but you're different. She's like, you're a very, you know, kind-hearted person. You have the potential to be a hero. To me, like, cause what really sets it in stone is like the whole Cyber Superman thing. He threw that LexCorp sign made out of like marble or stone or whatever, threw it at Lena when she popped up. It's like, holy crap, did your mom order him to do that? He doesn't do anything without, I mean, I'm sure he has his own way of doing things, but it's like, I'm pretty sure like Lillian kind of decides ahead of like Tom what he does. I mean, it's like she sure as hell wasn't watching that to tell him not to do it. And it didn't seem like he got it doesn't seem like she got on him about that later on. Or just kind of like, oh, the next time they run into each other, it's like, oh, you called me. It's like, oh, 2 times in a week. That's kind of something. It's like, you ain't even, like, you never had that moment of being like, oh, scolding Cyber Superman for doing that. It's because I think to a certain extent he was supposed to do that. Maybe not necessarily kill Lena, but more so than anything, kind of injure her and kind of push her out of the way so they could get devices they need to kind of widespread the virus and whatnot. So it's just like, that was just kind of like, I'm surprised that never came up. If I was Lena, I'd be super pissed about it. It's like, yo, mom, you're really behind Cadmus. You try to have me killed. I mean, I guess she could, like, oh yeah, he was that so shit of mine. He just kind of went about his own ways. But, you know, Lena played it good. I was like, the moment Lena turned to her side, I was like, yeah, she's playing. I was like, but then like she started working with the kid and everything. I was like, ooh, maybe she's not. I was like, oh man, what's going to happen here? Like the gas is spreading out. I was like, because I kept seeing the breaches kind of opening up and everything. It's like, okay, Barry, you could show up at any time, kind of lend a hand. And it was just kind of, because Cyber Superman was choking Kara out at one point. He's just like, no one's coming to save you. The breach opens and distracts him, and she was able to kind of get free. But it's like, it blows. Like, I was halfway, I was like, oh man, the gas is in the air. I was like, oh man, everyone's screwed. It's like, not unless she makes a gigantic tornado. It's like, oh, no, don't have to worry about it. Everything's good. It's like, oh, Lena was on the good side all the time, all along. So it would have been cool if we kind of got a conversation between her and Supergirl to be like, yo, we're good. Yeah. It's like, oh, thank you for being the hero. But it was like, we never got that conversation. We did see her getting her mom arrested, which, you know, being the head of Cadmus, there's no way it's going down that easily. I'm sure she's got a lot of connections, so she'll probably be able to get out pretty easily. I mean, who's to really say that she is necessarily the head of Cadmus? We assume that, but there might be someone above her. Another kind of smaller thing that kind of popped up in this episode was there's like an alien ship out in space that's with Mon-El. They're looking for him. It's like, oh, like, so I'm kind of pushing it more and more. I truly believe Mon-El isn't just a regular Daxamite. I think he might be a prince. Maybe he's like a prisoner that escaped. I don't know. I like to really think he's actually a royalty, that the prince from the story is actually him, that the royal guard actually sent the prince away, because he makes it seem like he was a royal guard, but I think he's going to be a prince. I brought that up last episode just because it randomly came to my mind. Like, it seemed like he is hiding something, and the fact is that someone's going out of the way. Because if he was a regular Daxamite, why would it matter? Like, you know, But for them to go after him so harsh, it's like he has to be someone special. So that'd be kind of interesting. Obviously, that's nothing we're going to get discovered this week. I don't even know if there's going to be any episodes next week because of the whole crossover thing. Maybe, maybe not. I'll just really have to wait till like either the end of the week to see will there be anything. I'll probably end up checking the dates for the next episodes to kind of see where that's coming from. But that's beside the point. Another thing that popped up in this episode was John. We kind of saw him go full white Martian because it's like, to him, he's like, yo, if I have to go out swinging, then I'll go out swinging. I'd rather die as a green Martian fighting for what I want to protect. And it's like, if I end up dying, then so be it. That be my fate. But I'd rather die as a green Martian than as a white Martian. And when he was fighting Cyborg Superman, he ended up morphing into a white Martian. I was like, ooh, dude. I was like, are we going to see? Oh, is he going to fight like that from now on? It's like, no, because by the time of the episode ends, it's like, yeah, we cured Mon-El. Also, we cured John too. Like, go, mom. Alex and Kara's mom is pretty badass, pretty smart lady. But also, it wasn't just Mon-El and Kara that we dealt with relationships in this episode. It's also Maggie and Alex, because Alex's big news at the beginning. I was like, all right, that thing you want to tell everyone is like the way she's acting, kind of getting a little drunk beforehand. I was like, all right, because Kara knows, but your mom doesn't, but she doesn't get her chance to because the breach opens up at the table, whatnot. But then you also have, the moment later on, but her mom kind of figured out, is the fact that you talk about Maggie a lot. She's like, I didn't tell you because, because I thought you wanted me to have a normal life, and me being gay wouldn't necessarily be normal. It's like, for one, you're my daughter, it's like, I'm gonna love you no matter what. You're always gonna be an excellent, like, besides like gay not being normal, it's just kind of like, she has that mentality of like being gay is not the typical normal life, I guess. But like, our mom is like, you're happy and you're you. Like, that's all that matters. It's like, the fact is, I never expected you to have a normal life. It's like, look at me, look at you, look at your sister. We were never going to have a normal life, and it's fine. Like, I accept that, and I'm glad that you accept it too, that you become this person that you are. Like, as long as you're happy, it's like, you're my little girl. I'm always going to love you. And it's just like, ugh, I love it. I don't know why. It's just because you never know how shows could take things, and maybe they'll be like, oh, maybe mom's not okay with it, but then learns to be okay with it. But it's like, no, mom's straight out not every parent's like that, but some are. So that's pretty cool. And for Alex, she finally realized it's like, she's been fighting it for so long. Like, she was making it seem like, oh, the reason she came out was for Maggie. And then she kind of now realizes more so than anything, coming out was for her, because it was like, she was trying to fit this mold of, once again, normal, but now this is her new normal. And it's just like, she feels like herself. So it's no longer questioning who she is. Now Alice has kind of found herself, kind of found her own stride into like, this is who I am. I'm going to be who I am, which kind of pays off a little later on, because Maggie, I guess it kind of inspired her a little bit, because Maggie was like, okay. So basically telling me that you came out because of me freaked me out a little bit. I guess it's just kind of like, it was kind of a little too much. She got a little scared. But the fact of the matter is, it's kind of like the feelings are there. It's like, I almost died now. And it's like, it kind of got me thinking, it's like, hey, and he started making out. I'm like, okay. I mean, I wanted this to happen. It's just kind of, there's a part of me that's kind of like, but that you got friend zoned for a little while. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, that's me. Like, I brought it up last episode about the whole friend zoning thing, how I have that issue with it. Either was that last episode or episode before last. Nevertheless, you know how I feel about it and everything. So I was kind of like, but at the same time, it's like, I'm happy because I like them together. I want to see more of them, and not just in a relationship sense. I want to see more of Maggie because she's a badass. I want to see her kind of work hand in hand with the DEO. I guess that's kind of the point. Not trying to, because the show is like, kind of put it in different comparison, not trying to Jimmy Olsen her, where it's just kind of like, oh, his only thing is being the love interest. Because, now Jimmy's got his own story about being a guardian, being a vigilante and stuff like that. But, Maggie was already a cop before she even hooked up with Alex. So it's just kind of like that but it was there to kind of bring them closer together just as friends and then partners. And then, well, the non-platonic partners, too. So we didn't get every relationship we wanted because of the whole Kara and Mon-El, which, like, it still throws me off a little bit. It's like, holy crap. And then the whole thing about Miss Martian, I was hoping it's kind of sad that she's kind of locked up, because the fact is, no one knows about him becoming a white Martian. So does that mean they don't know about her too? Did he just lock her up down there with no one else knowing that? Or do the others know that she's down there too? Because there was no mention of it. Because she's like, oh, you're turning into a white Martian? Which I totally forgot to bring up last episode. But it's like, you know, Kara didn't know that. Obviously, he was going to keep that a secret from everyone. Because it's like, hey, there's a virus out there that's going to wipe out aliens and stuff like that. Let's let the team have more focus on that rather than diverting any attention towards me. So I'm curious about that angle. Like, what is going to happen from there on? Like, he is going to keep her locked up. Obviously, you know, in some shape or form, they're going to have to come back together. Like, I'm just so curious to see what's beyond this. Like, obviously, I'm super excited for the crossover and everything, but I'm just curious also what this means for Supergirl going forward. The whole thing about Mon-El, you know, Magan locked up like that, where everyone's relationship stands. Like, things are going to be weird and awkward between Mon-El and Kara, because like Kara's like, oh, I remember the fact that he kissed me, but I didn't say anything. And then like she's like, oh, but he doesn't remember. And then Mon-El's like, I remember, I just chose not to say anything. So then what it means for Maggie and Alex going forward, just so many questions. What's going to happen with Guardian? Will Win and Jimmy tell her the truth? And like, what does this mean for Cadmus now that her mom's been arrested? Once again, she's a well-connected person. She's a Luthor, so I'm sure that's not going to stick for long. But kind of closing things out, we've got the very ending where we have Barry and freaking Cisco popping up, which I'm not too surprised. I knew Barry, but also because I saw the actor who plays, is it Carlos? I can't remember his last name, but the actor who plays Cisco, I saw their names, so I was like, okay, so it's Cisco and Barry, so he's not just running here, he's got a little help from Vibe and whatnot. But then it's like, she's like, Barry, I should have known it was you. He's like, yeah, this is my friend Cisco. He's like, yeah, friends, kind of not the right term. We kind of work together, which I'm like, still, I mean, granted, you know, we kind of already know where Flash kind of left off with them being at odds after the whole, oh, you're the reason why Dante's actually dead because of you. The whole Flashpoint thing, like my brother was alive in a different timeline until you went back and screwed things over and now he's dead. So we see that they're kind of reluctantly working together. It's just kind of like, you know, because remember what his last words to Barry was like, are we good? And it's like, Cisco was like, honestly, I don't know. So it's kind of more of like, yeah, we're kind of forced to work together. We're on okay terms. We're not friends anymore. We're not best friends like we were before. So, but it's like, hey, we need help. So, hey, and it's like, oh, to be continued on The Flash. So it's a really good episode. Super excited to see where it goes on. And since I am saying that, why don't we take this and move on to the next segment where future Michael, Tuesday night, maybe Wednesday morning, Michael is going to tell us about this week's episode of The Flash and the continuation of the crossover event. So future Michael, take the lead. Thank you, past Michael. Now starting the Flash segment of things. I know this is weird. It's going to be a stupid bit that I'm going to continue for the rest of the nights, but do deal with it. I do apologize for my stupidity. I thought it'd be funny. I'm sure it's going to wear thin by tomorrow if it hasn't already, even at this point, just because it's just a stupid bit. But nevertheless, today was the Flash episode, like, whereas Supergirl is kind of the opening act, just kind of like, oh, we're kind of tying it into that, because more so than anything, it seems like Supergirl was more the standalone episode of, like, it's kind of its own contained thing, and then you kind of throw in the fact that, like, hey, we have the crossover, so it's like the prologue to it, and this is the episode where everything comes together. So essentially, aliens known as Dominators come to Earth. Very interestingly enough, Kara does seem to know about them from her world as well, which we ended up getting a number to it because Cisco was like, okay, yeah, it seems like you are on Earth 30. I was like, what? Yay! It's like we finally have a number to it because I kept constantly referring to her Earth as Earth X. So now we have an official number to it. It's like 38. It's like, so there's, you know, I don't know why. It's a small thing. I'm surprised out of anything. Like, you know, when you break it down, it's kind of like, you know, the whole obsession with the number 52. It's like, you kind of were expecting that. Maybe they have plans for the Earth 52 some other point down the road. But nevertheless, it's kind of interesting. It makes you wonder how different space is on this Earth compared to Earth 38. Where the fact of the matter is, she also knows about the Dominators. So they're obviously, you know, no matter what reality you're in, there's always connections, because the thing is, like, if they exist in this, like, universe, who's to say that Krypton doesn't also exist on this Earth too, that maybe, like, Krypton never exploded on this Earth, so that's why Kryptonians aren't here, that's why Superman and Supergirl don't exist on this particular Earth, you know? It could be a way of thinking about that with the way things are, but nevertheless, apparently the Dominators have been here to Earth before many, many years ago. Lila's the only one that has information on them. Because basically the government's trying to hide the fact is, some top level agents and stuff are like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. This aliens, what? No, because it was Barry who kind of found out about him. I know I'm not getting to it. I need to just get to it. I'm gonna go ahead and blunt with you and say like that. I've never felt so good about an episode. The last time I felt this good about an episode was the Flash and Supergirl crossover from last season. This was that magnified. I was so giddy during this episode. I was super excited. It's like everyone came together. It's like we got Team Arrow, we've got the Legends, we've got parts of Team Flash. Well, not technically we have all of Team Flash, and then you got Supergirl too, and it's like it's amazing. Even having them ask some questions. So what's so super about her? Flies up, use the heat ray vision, and it's like Diggle's like, yep. You sold me. And it's like, I feel so bad for Diggle because he brings it up. He's just like, Barry, my life used to be simple until you came into it. And Barry's just kind of like, I'm sorry, just the way life is. And really more so than anything, nothing too drastic really went down in this episode. I mean, obviously, the drastic things that went down I'll get to essential, but really it is all about building the team. I didn't really know I was wondering how they were going to pull this like across like 4 parts, but now I'm kind of seeing it as like, this is kind of the real opening act. Like I said, Supergirl was kind of the prologue, and more so than anything, it seems like it is the most standalone episode. But with what they're doing with the Flash, it seems very interesting. Like, even though it's like we got all this stuff mixed in, it's not like they're standalone stories. There's stuff that can be pulled from it as well. Even with the Supergirl and Flash crossover, there was still stuff that Kara kind of pulled away from it. Because with the whole Flash situation, we never really got Barry's perspective on like, what he learned from his experience. Like, the only one that really gained anything from it was Kara, to kind of be more open and, kind of push forward with the whole Jimmy situation. But nevertheless, I just got super giddy. Even later on in the episode where Kara is just like, oh yeah, I have X-ray vision, and he's like, and then you have Mick being like, oh, so you can see everyone's bits, and she's like, oh no, I would never do that. It's just like, because everyone's had that dirty thought about if they had X-ray vision. I mean, not everyone. I'm generalizing that. Very perverted people have had that thought before, and it's like, I love the fact is that Mick was the one to bring that up, and then she's like, so what's the name like? How do you get a name like Heatwave? And he's like, oh yeah, I burned my parents alive, and I like to burn stuff. And she's like, oh, that's a interesting background. And she's like, so he's like, so what should I call you? She's like, well, you can call me Supergirl. He's like, no, that's stupid. He's like, well, you can call me Car. He's like, no, that's not gonna work either. He's like, I'm gonna call you Skirt. And it's like, okay. I just love it. It's just the interactions between people. Even Iris being like, so Green Arrow is Oliver Queen is Green Arrow. It's like, oh, he's so much. It makes him even more hotter now. And Barry's just like, oh, Iris, no, don't say that. It was very interesting because we get to see different characters interact, especially because we kind of get to finally, well, for one, big interaction is kind of like, a big thing in this episode is the fact is that Cisco still has a chip on his shoulder, which I will say again, he has every right to be mad at Barry. Like I brought it up during the Supergirl episode. It's like, oh, the fact is, I pointed out, like, you could still see that Cisco was mad at him. It's like, oh, we're not friends. I kind of reiterated that in this episode. But the fact is, Cisco was super pissed at Barry, like, even to the point, like, it's like, oh, who should lead the team? And Barry's like, everyone's kind of like, oh, who decided who leads the team? Cisco, just to spite Barry, was like, I think Oliver should lead the team or whatever. But then Oliver was like, no, Barry should lead the team. And he's just like, okay, whatever. And then, like, Cisco's talking to Ray. In a moment Barry comes around, he avoids him, and it's just like, he talks to Felicity. But there's like, the thing is, it wasn't a situation where Felicity could talk to him. Like, there is no talking him out of it. He has every right to be pissed. But it still sucks because it's kind of like you're picking the worst time. Like he said, he wasn't going to let it interfere. He's going to get the job done, which he didn't, but he did cause problems. Essentially, you had Martin and Jefferson kind of been like, okay, let's play the message. And Barry's like, okay, like, Oliver's got to come too. So ends up playing the message. Everyone hears it. It's like from future Barry, he's talking about a war's coming. It's like, when you come back, things will be different. Don't trust anyone. Don't even trust me. And it's like, what does that mean? And Barry spills the beans. It's like, well, since you guys been going, I kind of went back and changed everything. Flashpoint. And it's like, because this episode, and that's a great thing about this episode too, it pushes Flashpoint being like, Barry screwed up big time. It's like he screwed up a little, yeah, but it's like it broadens the scale of being like, you know, for one, Barry thought doing what he was doing, even trying to fix things, it would only affect his life. How little did he know it was going to affect everyone's life in such drastic ways? Sure, Iris and Joe didn't talk and were kind of at odds and stuff like that, but for the fact of the matter is that just how much else has changed. Caitlin is a metahuman now. You have Cisco losing his brother Dante. Then the whole thing about John and Sarah. I mean, Cisco got to the point that he was just kind of like, hey, I guess I'm going to have to, he finds the message and he's like, oh, so you're going to hide this from us too? It's like, you have to tell them. You're going, oh, wait till this is all over to tell him? Because Oliver told him, is like, no, the last thing we need is the rest of the team to know, because this is going to complicate things drastically. And it's like, it just sucked, and he told everyone the truth, and everyone kind of got down his throat, especially John. Is like, oh, so you mean my little girl kind of got wiped from existence? I'm sorry. Even Sarah jumping down his throat, being like, the fact of the matter is I stopped myself from trying to get my revenge, but it's like, the moment we turn around, you go off and do something like that. Even Ray being like, the fact of the matter is you went off, like, we fighting these time aberrations, like trying to fix time, and there you are going off by yourself and doing something like that. I mean, the fact of the matter, like I said, everyone has the right to be mad, because it's like, because of the whole time traveling thing, they don't know what's different about their lives. Granted, Stein ended up finding out about the woman from his dreams, and ended up being, apparently in this Flashpoint timeline, he has a daughter. It's not like there was another woman. I was wondering about that. I was like, I didn't think that was the case, but it was, because it was like time was trying to catch up to him, and it's like this person was his daughter, so that's who it was. His memories kind of changing to fit that narrative. But you know, will it get to the point where he's like Barry, where he ends up forgetting about the original timeline? Because the fact of the matter is, he'd be better off forgetting it anyway. That is a side note. Like Barry, like that's something that was never brought up too. Like Barry ended up forgetting certain things here and there when he corrected Flashpoint. Does that mean he gained back any memories he might have lost, like stuff that he might have been forgetting back when he was losing his memories in Flashpoint? Did he ever get that back? Because that was never really discussed. So, because the fact of the matter is that timeline no longer exists. So, what's the point of that being like a thing? They even had that knowledge, because it doesn't matter, because Barry can't go back to that timeline. Even if he went back to try and fix things, he'd most likely just keep making things worse, because the timeline is already like time. I guess if you want to kind of use time traveling terms in it, the space-time continuum is already cracked. I know that's probably not the right terminology, but I'm just going to use that. Time itself is cracked, because Barry going back and forth between time and changing things drastically like that. Something I did learn, it wasn't something drastically, I did learn that basically in the comic books there were drastic changes to like the DC universe because of Flashpoint. Like I said, my knowledge of Flashpoint was only because of like the little Justice League animated movie I saw. That was kind of like a standalone story. Like I said, I brought it up then that, yeah, even then, that's a very condensed story. I'm pretty sure of it. So I'm pretty sure it's kind of a standalone thing, so you never really got to see any ramification. But like I read one line to be like, oh yeah, even in the comic book, Flashpoint made some drastic changes. What those changes are, I don't know. I don't really want to know at this point. I want to wait a little while to kind of see. But it's just like I said, everyone has their right to be mad at him. Because even to the point, like even John was like, I'm not going out with him as leader. And then, like, the only people still on his side is Kara and Oliver, because Oliver, like, knows better than anyone what it means to kind of screw up. He's like, screwing up is just part of the job. It's like part of being a hero. It's not everyone's perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. Kind of reiterating what Jay and Iris have already told him, being like, you're not a god. Because the fact of the matter is, life comes down to choices. Kind of like the whole alternate dimensions kind of theory of basically like your life is life kind of branches off into other like realities that basically is like, oh, you decided to go left at this fork in the road, maybe in another reality you went right. So that's kind of the similar thing that, you know, Oliver was kind of trying to bring up in this episode. Like the fact of the matter is, what life comes down to is choices. You didn't make those choices for people. When you change the timeline, those people made a different decision. It's like it's a flip of the coin. Like I said, reiterating what that was already brought up. Caitlin could have already been a metahuman in the original timeline. You just didn't know about it because her powers never manifested at that time. Maybe in this timeline, they just happened to manifest a little bit quicker. The whole situation with Dante's brother dying in an accident, like, who's to say Dante didn't originally die in the original timeline at a later point in time, but it's just, once again, in this situation, it happened faster. Just like, it's like maybe, using the example, maybe like Dante makes a sharp turn and it's okay in the original timeline, but in this timeline, it's like, just at that moment he's making that turn, someone happens to not be paying attention, while in the original timeline they were paying attention. It's not Barry's fault. I mean, like I said, these things played out this way because Barry changed things, but at the end of the day, people make choices, and that's all life is, choices. Like, there's no set way of how things are supposed to be. There's an infinite way, possibility of many things happening, being like, fact is, even, it's like tragedies happen all the time. In these situations, especially in Cisco's case, that was a tragedy. But the fact of the matter is that they happen all the time. So it's like Barry can't blame himself for that. He needs to stop beating himself up over it. Which is like, yes, he has to accept responsibility for it. But it's just like, it's like I said, it's so interesting when you see it kind of finally dawn on him. It's like he knew it affected the lives of people, but it put it in a grander scale, because even his future self is like, don't trust him. Like, everything's changed. It's like, don't even trust the people you think you should trust. And which, in Stein's case, does that mean not trusting his daughter? Like, what does that mean? What is Barry from the future trying to say? Like, from 2056, like, what is he trying to say? Because I kept bringing it up. I was like, I don't think this alien invasion is the war in particular he's talking about. I think there's something else coming. Because it's like, if that was the case, like, why would he go out of his way to bring that message to Hunter, like, out of all people? Could that be why Hunter went off on his own, because he did hear that message and he's dealing with it his own? Like, it makes you wonder, are they going to find a way to fix Flashpoint? Because to me, I don't think there is something you can do to fix that, because it's like, I mean, not unless it's something connected to Savitar, like, being a speed god, maybe he has the potential to fix that, but it's like, what does that mean for, I don't know. It's just like a very compelling story of just like the fact of the matter is they come together and yet they're so easily divided apart because of that. It's like, because Cisco didn't have the, like, I get it. Like, Cisco was like, no more lies and stuff like that. So he had every right to tell, like, let the team know the truth. But at the same time, it's like, you picked the wrong time. Barry said he was going to tell everyone afterwards, because he ended up telling you guys the truth too. It's just, because at the end of the day, it was Barry's decision to kind of tell. It's kind of like his situation with Caitlin last episode. He brought it up, like, excuse me, rather than giving Caitlin her opportunity to tell everyone in her own time, like, Cisco ended up forcing her to kind of speed up a little bit and kind of tell everyone the truth. So it was a situation where it was Barry's truth to tell, not his to kind of force out of Barry. So, like I said, it's going to be interesting seeing that relationship go forward, because it's like I said, Cisco has every right to be mad, but like the fact is, he's handling it like a normal person would. Like, people would be irrational like that. But once again, like Oliver said, the fact of the matter is, anyone in Barry's shoes would have done exactly that. Like, Cisco can't say. He literally wanted Barry to go back in time to save his brother. So it's like you wanted him to do the thing that you're chastising him about. I mean, because the fact of the matter is, like, I know it's a little mean, but kind of playing devil's advocate, you're mad because Barry changed the timeline and it saved someone that you cared about. And Barry kind of brought it up too. It's like going back again meant hurting someone else's family. So it's like you're okay with that as long as, you kind of threw it in Barry's face, but it's like, oh, you're okay with saving someone else's life as long as it's your family. But it's like, so you're willing to let him sacrifice destroying the timeline for the sake of bringing back your brother. So it's kind of like, it's a little hypocritical, if you ask me. Like I said, playing devil's advocate, I 100% agree with Cisco and like everyone being upset about it. Especially like, I mean, once again, irony, because Sarah was so hell-bent on killing Damien Dark. So it's kind of like, I guess because she prevented herself from doing it, it's like, but I mean, it's like, you can't blame him. He lost his parents. Like, he lost his mom at such a young age, and then to lose his dad, it's like he wanted, he did it in a moment of pain. Like, because, Oliver opened up to him and told him, the whole situation about, his dad killing the other guy that was with him and then killing himself just to make sure that Oliver could survive. And then, Slade killing his mom in front of him and Thea and wishing that he could take it back, that anyone in his shoes would have done exactly what he's done. So, like I said, it's a little messed up for everyone to kind of jump down his throat. Once again, I will say it again. It's understandable. They have every right to be, but like I said, I bring up, playing devil's advocate. I pointed out the hypocrisy behind it, so it's kind of like a very serious episode. It wasn't all about just having fun, which there were fun moments, obviously, when you had everyone kind of, well, for one, everyone going up against Kara, and she's just floating there in the air. It's like no matter what they hit her with, it's like nothing. She kicks everybody's ass because it's like she's pretty much invincible on this earth because there's no kryptonite to hurt her. So it's like unless you get someone super powerful, then they're not going to be able to do anything against her. Then there's the whole everyone getting brainwashed, which I didn't see that coming, which I thought that was kind of neat. Like most of the team is brainwashed, and the only ones left are Barry and Oliver fighting against everyone. You got Oliver going hand to hand with everyone on the ground. Then you have Barry going up against Adam, Firestorm, and Supergirl, who are flying, spins around, throws his lightning at them, and kind of knocks him out. But that doesn't stop, Kara, obviously, and she chases after him, zipping around the town. It's just, it was so sick, especially there's that moment Barry's running up the building, and then, Kara shoots her heat vision at him, and he kind of dodges it and does, a 180 and dashes back down the building. I was like, moments like that are just it's the reason why the Flash is so amazing. Why it's just this show is the reason why I love the Flash as a character, just because it's so cool. It's like, dude, that was sick. It's stuff like that is just outright amazing. Got Kara chasing him, flying through the town like that, keeping up with him, when he's dashing through the city and she flies beside him, tries to shoot him with the heat rays. It's like, that's so amazing, dude. And then you have Oliver doing his hand-to-hand going up against Thea, Diggle, as well as even, just everyone on the ground. Just it's so cool. And side note, this the thing is, I can never remember if Oliver always had these arrows or what. But the fact of the matter is, he's pulling out that arrow that he shoots and it splits into three. Was that him firing 3 arrows at once, or was it just the one arrow that split into 3? It looked like one arrow that split into 3, but he was almost cornered. And there was almost no way, and it's kind of okay, we're kind of screwed in this department. But luckily, Barry was able to kind of get Kara to kind of smash the mind control device. Like I said, I was actually surprised in this episode they didn't actually fight up with the aliens, because that's what I was bringing up. The fact is that I was wondering how they were going to spread this across 4 parts, but it's like I said, this is kind of the opening act of getting everyone together. But that's crazy to me. And another part of this episode was the whole Wally situation. Wally is, you have Iris, being very defensive. Joe was being a little reluctant about the whole Kid Flash thing. He's already been very adamant about how he feels about it. But in this episode, you got Iris kind of putting her foot down. It's no, we can't encourage Wally, telling Cisco, don't even bring up the whole costume situation. It's kind of give him the cold shoulder about the whole situation, just to kind of deter him from being here, because it's he's better than Barry was when Barry originally started. He's faster than him, and she doesn't want that to kind of go to his head. As we already know from Flashpoint, Wally was super arrogant as Kid Flash, kind of reason why he got injured in the first place. But for him, it's just he wants to do good, but at the same time, it's you understand where Iris and them are coming from too. Because the thing is, that is crazy though. It's they treat Wally very differently than they do Barry. It's when they found out about, Barry got a little flack from Joe about the whole speedster thing when he found out, but then eventually he was kind of okay with it. It took him a while, but he was eventually to the point, it's hey, you go out there and be a hero. But so why do you have such a problem with the Wall? The thing is, it's kind of no matter what, Barry is family, but the fact is Wally is your son. Wally is her brother. So it just kind of changes things a little bit. It begs the question, is that really all there is to it? Maybe it's because they know his personality so well. It's because it's Barry was always a good kid, which isn't to say Wally isn't a good kid, but the fact of the matter is, kind of bringing it up again, Joe kind of knows who he was at his age and what he would do with superpowers, which doesn't mean, like I said, it's just interesting. It does make you wonder why they do treat them very differently. Wally did have his moment to kind of help out when he kind of sped around to help Barry, so maybe we'll kind of be seeing him in the future kind of stepping up, whether it's the next Flash episode or even through the rest of this Heroes versus Alien thing. It's going to be interesting. That's all I got to say. It's is gonna like. I don't like I say at the end of the day, I don't think Barry has such a problem with Kid Flash in the sense of like, oh, like he doesn't believe in Wally. It's just I think it's because Flashpoint scared him and now he doesn't want the same thing to happen because like if it happens, there's no redoing that. There's no more traveling back in time. So like for him it's very permanent. And I'm guessing for Iris that might be play a role in that too, why she's so very protective all of a sudden. I mean she's always been protective just of the people she cares about, but in this particular case, I think the reason for that is because maybe because of what happened to him in Flashpoint getting hurt, maybe she's afraid that will happen. And like, there's no going back in time for Barry when it comes to that. So, because he even brings it up himself. He's kind of like, the fact is, you and Flashpoint, you had my back about this whole situation. We were actually a team, but it's like in this time you don't trust me, and it's like I'm wondering why. And like I said, I think because of the knowledge of Flashpoint kind of changed her mind about reason. Like, you know, if it weren't for Flashpoint, I don't think she would be having the same feeling. Also because it's like the reason why he got the powers is because of alchemy too, so I think that's one reason to be very reserved. But interestingly enough, you have HR being like, no, he's going to train Wally because he's like, everyone else doesn't see his potential, but he's like, I do. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes too. To see how that perspective, like what that means for him. Is like, because it's like out of anyone, the person that should train him is Barry, you know, being a speedster and all. But I guess it does beg the question, like the fact is that HR is the idea guy. No, he's not always best at implementing it, but he's still the idea guy. He comes up with interesting ideas, so it's going to be, you know, especially because him and Wally are actually kind of bonding because it's like trying to find their place on the team where no one really trusts him. Neither one of them, because it's like, oh, they don't believe in their abilities. Like for instance, no one really believes in HR because it's like, oh, he's just the idea guy. He's not as smart as everyone else. He kind of rehashes ideas. Like, oh, you say something, he kind of repeats it back too. You're kind of like an idiot. But he is trying his best, and he does come up with ideas. He does point out something. He kind of it does help to have someone there to kind of think outside the box. It's like you have this very smart bubble that you'll think in, and it's like someone that with a different perspective to be like, oh, well, maybe it's something like this. I can't put it in a very sciencey words, but maybe it's something like this. A great example of that would be, kind of going off book here, is the show Eureka. Jack from Eureka, like he was like in a town full of geniuses, but he was the one that kind of solved problems all the time because he had a very different perspective than most people. He came from it from a different angle. Like he didn't, like I said, know the science behind things, but he's like, oh, what if we did this, this, and this, and that? And they're like, even though you didn't put it in the most elegant way, that might work. So it might be kind of a similar situation. Like I said, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. Also, side note is the whole situation with the newspaper, because for Barry, you know, once again, not just everyone's lives, he's even changed the future, because that newspaper used to say, oh, it was written by, you know, Iris, his wife, but now it says a different person's name. I'm pretty sure if I probably caught the name, it probably would have been something relevant, but I didn't catch the name. Which could mean a lot of things. To me, my brain automatically goes, because this is something I read like months and months and months ago, probably like sometime during last season, because I was looking up stuff about Professor Zoom to kind of get a little more of an idea. Like this is after he was revealed to be Hunter Zolom, and I was just looking a little bit more into Professor Zoom. And apparently I ended up reading something about, I don't know whether it's 100% canon, depending what universe and whatnot, but basically, you know, because the whole situation with Professor Zoom and Reverse Flash, in some cases they're the same persons, other times it seems like they might be two separate people like they are in the show. Nevertheless, basically, whether it was one or, you know, the same person, one of them did the whole vibrating thing and shoved their hand through Iris's skull, killing her, like, you know. So that could be what that means. Like, at the end of this, Iris might die, which is like, you never know. Because for Barry, he kind of, in everyone else's words, it's like Barry got what he wanted. I mean, which isn't the case. He got part of what he wanted. He wants everyone in his life happy too, but everyone's kind of sad and just things aren't working out for everyone. I mean, because that's another thing too. It makes you wonder how drastically everyone else's lives are. Like, will we kind of get to see that? Will there be anything be different about Jax's life? Will his dad actually be alive in this timeline? Like, things aren't necessarily 100% bad. Like I said, things kind of worked out for Stein because he has a daughter in his life. I mean, whether he's still married to Clarissa or not, I mean, that's kind of still up to debate. But I mean, because we didn't see her, he didn't see her, but he talked to their daughter, so it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm fingers crossed that they're still married, and it's just like, oh, so for him, maybe things did work out. We'll just kind of have to wait to see, but to me, that's the only thing that kind of comes to mind. Not unless it's like, oh, things change and Iris decides not to. Maybe eventually down the road she somehow gets powers, so she stops being a reporter. But my brain, like the moment like her name wasn't there, I was like, dude, Flashpoint changed it. So it's like, because like I say, I don't know what timeline that is that I read that about, whether like where in the comic books, there's all these different version alterations. Was that pre-Flashpoint? Was that post-Flashpoint? Questions like that, what that particular thing I read. I don't know if that's a situation kind of like Gwen Stacy, where it's just kind of like, yeah, she's going to die. Like it's just kind of written in the stars that she's going to die, which is kind of the question of like whether fate's the whole thing. It begs a lot of questions. So I'm just overall like a very fantastic episode. Just kind of bring like I said, it's so good. That feeling of having everyone together, and it's just amazing. And like I said, the story of just like dealing with the continued ramifications, like no matter what Barry does, because the whole point is like fighting these aliens. It's like, I've done so much bad stuff because of Flashpoint and everything. He thought like maybe this is some minor way he can make up for it, and now he starts thinking like, hell, who's to say this whole situation didn't play out because of me? Maybe these aliens coming here happened because I created Flashpoint. It's like, now Barry's looking at everything that goes wrong and blames himself, thinking like, oh, it's automatically my fault because that's different. Maybe all this stuff is happening because of me. Maybe something like Savitar and alchemy, like, I mean, who's to say? Like, that's the thing, like, Savitar is a speed god. Like, I doubt you made that with Flashpoint. I'm sure that was always a thing, and maybe Savitar just took this opportunity because the timeline's cracking a little bit. It kind of gave him an opportunity to kind of break free of whatever prison he might have been held in. Because the fact of the matter is, we still haven't heard, like, I'm sure Barry will eventually go to Jay and ask him about it. I mean, it's like, why not ask a seasoned speedster about this whole situation? But nevertheless, like I said, very fantastic episode. Cannot wait to see the continuation, especially where we had the ending where some of the team gets sucked away by the aliens. So it's going to be interesting to see where everything goes down in the continuation of the crossover event in Arrow. And so that kind of concludes this the Flash segment. So I'm passing this on to future me, well, further me in the future, to be like, hey, what went down in Arrow? Thank you, other past Michael. And now moving on to the Arrow segment of this crossover event. Yeah, this is I still think this is just the dumbest idea I've ever had, like doing that whole little bit. But still, I started it and I'm going to finish it. So enough said about it. But this episode was very interesting. Like, I was wondering what was going to go down. I didn't expect this turn of events. So basically, the ones that were taken, Oliver, Thea, Sarah, Ray, and Diggle, are basically hooked up to these machines that kind of put them in a false reality. Basically, in this false reality, everyone's kind of living their normal lives, except for Diggle, which I'll get to that in a second. But everyone's kind of typically living normal lives. Basically, Laurel's back, even if it's just for one episode, to see her back, that's still pretty awesome. But she's back. Thea and Oliver's mom and dad are alive in this world, and the fact is, Oliver is marrying Laurel, so it's kind of like the perfect world. There's even that moment where he's talking to Lance and stuff like that. He's like, oh man, originally, Oliver, I didn't really like you. I thought you were a spoiled brat, but I was like, you changed, grown into a good man. It's like, I just don't want you to break my little. It's like, oh, you're having second thoughts. You're not having second thoughts. Or he's like, no. It's like, good, because I wouldn't want to have to shoot you for breaking my little girl's heart. Just laughing like that. I was like, it's so weird because Lance has hated Oliver for so long, and to see him interact with Oliver like that was kind of weird. Because even now they still don't even have that type of relationship. They're okay with each other, but they're not all buddy like that. It was weird seeing him smile towards Oliver like that. It's like that's they definitely got it wrong in that situation. But I mean, granted, who's to say if circumstances weren't different that it couldn't have been that way? Maybe he would have. I mean, because this is almost like a big what if situation. Like, the best way I look at it, because it's very interesting, because back in the Flash episode, we had Oliver being the only one that's really understanding about the whole situation. He's like, are you kidding me? If I had your powers, Barry, I would go back in time and save my parents in an instant. He brought that up, and now that's playing a part in this episode, because for him, this episode was his flashpoint. It's like he had everything he wanted, just like Barry did, but things didn't work out. For Oliver, it's like everything he wanted is right there. Laurel, his parents, he has his family. He doesn't have to worry about being the vigilante or superhero. Like, he just live a normal life. I mean, interestingly enough, I was actually surprised about it. Like, when Thea found out the truth, she was the most reluctant to leave, because she's like, we have our parents again, Oliver. Why would you want to leave? It's like all those years you spent, like, protecting people, saving people. It's like, this is your reward. And Oliver's like, I didn't do it for a reward. I did it because I wanted to make our city a better, like, place. That's why I did this. And it's like, this here is just a reminder showing me that our job isn't done. And the fact is that, yes, this is a happy little world, but the outside world isn't like that. Yes, Barry and Kara are there, but at the same time, it's kind of like they've got their own stuff to deal with. Barry's got to deal with a speed god. Kara's got to deal with Cadmus, and well, she's already dealt with Cadmus, but she's got her own world to protect. So it's like she can't just be there protecting theirs. But it's like, at the same time, it's like you get where Thea's coming from, because even Oliver didn't want to go, because it's like I said, this was his everything. It was like, it was his flashpoint, like having everything he wanted, but he knew it wasn't real, and it's like he had to get back to the other people that were waiting for them, that are counting on them. They can't just up and live in this fantasy world forever. But like I said, everyone kind of had normal lives. Sarah did, Thea did, even Ray did, just had normal lives. But Diggle was the most interesting, because out of everyone, rather than him being like, oh, like maybe he ends up being Oliver's bodyguard in his dream world as well, in this world, he was actually the vigilante. Which I guess in certain ways it kind of makes sense because of the whole John situation. Well, John Jr. In Legends of Tomorrow in 2047 ended up becoming the new Green Arrow. But nevertheless, to me, the whole reality is basically the Dominators are giving you what you desire the most. They built a reality that would keep everyone distracted. Because obviously the biggest focus was Oliver, just because he's kind of the center of it all. And so everyone else's lives are kind of interconnected with his. So obviously Sarah's going to be there because, she's Laurel's sister. Thea's his sister, so obviously she's going to be there. Ray didn't pop up that often just because he was kind of like a Queen Consolidated, business partner and whatnot. But for Diggle, Diggle's always punished himself for everything that's ever gone wrong in his life, whether it's stuff in the military, whether it's stuff with Andy. And so basically his reality was warped in the sense of he wanted redemption. In that reality, he was like, hey, I came here, I became a vigilante because I wanted to kind of make up for my past. And it's like, that's what he wants the most in his heart, is redemption for what's happened between like I said, the military as well as Andy. And it's kind of sad. Like I said, out of everyone had good lives in that fake reality, and you have Diggle going off being the vigilante. It kind of sucks. I mean, granted, me saying that, it's almost like being like, man, Oliver's life sucked, because that's kind of all he really has. But at the end of the day, even with the vigilante life, that's not all he has. Side note, I also want to point out, no one bothered mentioning it, but it's like, yo, where's Artemis during all this? I mean, the last time we saw Artemis, we kind of know why she's not around, but it's like, hey, you're not around during a crucial point. Aliens are attacking and you're too busy to kind of come in contact. But the fact is, no one even brought up a question. It's one of those things that's it's kind of similar to the whole Flash and Supergirl crossover. It's like, oh yeah, he went there, but they made no mention of it. We see him kind of opening kind of a breach point to go there in one episode. It was some episodes later after the crossover, and then coming back immediately, and it was there was no mention of anything. So it's kind of like that, because it's just kind of I know, I'm nitpicking it. I think it's funny no one mentioning that, but I guess it's hey, maybe she's off somewhere sick or whatever. So, and speaking of the team, really quick, I want to bring up the fact is, I was everyone else on the team is pretty oh man, you're super awesome. It's the fact is, Supergirl, Flash, this is amazing. But Renee was the most reluctant about it, and he was just kind of yo, I don't trust you. I'm like, okay. It's because at first he acts weird about Cisco. Cisco's oh, I'm about the vibe and everything, and I love Curtis being oh yeah, I know, we're kind of been the best friends forever, and we know all there is to say about each other, kind of joking, being but tell me what is it that you do exactly? It's I could see the past, future, and kind of see where people are. He vibes. He's and then Renee's kind of makes a comment oh, you're one of them, aren't you? He's yeah. Cisco's okay, what the hell was up with that? I'm it's wait, does Renee hate metas? And then it turns out later on, because even when he meets Supergirl, it's oh, she's an alien. Well, that doesn't make anything better. There's no good alien. For Renee, it's kind of, I was oh, do you have some kind of beef with metas? Did metas kind of screw up your life? For him, no. It's just he doesn't like people with powers, because he's the fact of the matter is, you think being in this get up and everything and having powers, that kind of similar to kind of Julius, of the fact is that you have those powers, but it's you really think you can do a good job at saving the world. It's I'm out here no powers, doing the real work. I guess it's like, basically to him, he blames them for everything. It's like, he blames Barry because it's like, oh, you're the only reason why Meta's around. I mean, to be fair, Metas kind of existed at the same time Barry did. Metas were going to be around whether Barry came out as a Flash or not. He came out as a Flash in response to other, Metas being out there. So it's like, that was kind of a simultaneous deal. And for Supergirl, she wasn't even on this Earth at that time. The Dominators came here first, and then she came from her Earth to this Earth. So, but to me, it's a very interesting thing because it's kind of like, that's typically like the whole super view of superheroes, because that's kind of a big, Renee kind of speaks for a lot of like, whether it's cartoons and stuff like that or movies and stuff like that. When it comes to superheroes, that's always the thing. It's like, heroes beget villains. It's like, because a hero exists, there will always be someone there to kind of rise to fight them. So it's kind of like, because he looks at it like, oh, because Barry's there. I guess you could argue he could probably feel the same way about Oliver. The reason why there's so many villains is because Oliver existed and because the Green Arrow existed. But at the same time, it's like, well, Star City's always been kind of like a place, but it's definitely really kicked up since the Vigilante / Arrow / Green Arrow kind of popped up. That really kind of kicked up over these years. So my favorite part about the whole team up thing, which is like, sadly, you didn't even get to see Ragman do anything. And that's another thing too. Like, that's what I was quickly almost about to forget about. What about Ragman? You have such a problem with people with powers. You have a dude that's maybe a metahuman, which I'm leaning more towards the fact is it's magic. It's like, that still counts. It's like, you don't have you haven't brought up any concerns about Ragman. But like I said, the moment they went up against, they're calling her Cyberwoman, the fact is, the moment they showed up and double teamed her like that, which is, I know it sounds so wrong when I say it like that, but it was like Kara and Barry just, like, I love it. Like, Barry dashes over to rapid punches her, and you have like Barry smiling and see Kara, and they tag it. It's like, it wasn't even necessary, but I appreciate it, CW. I appreciate it. You didn't need to do that, but you did it, and I love you for it. Just like having fun tagging in, and the Supergirl like punches her, and Barry kind of moves back, dashes forward, and clotheslines her, and it's just like, it's so good. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's just, to me, it was just amazing, that moment. And then, not even just talking about that, then we cut back to that fake world and just seeing everyone kind of slowly figure it out. And it's just like, my favorite part is when you see everyone lined up. You got Ghost, you got Dark, you got Slade, which Slade doesn't talk for obvious reasons, because I don't know if I've ever brought that up before. Like, the reason why Slade doesn't, apparently there was an issue with the actor who played Slade. I'm not trying to hold anything against him, but basically there was a situation. I don't remember what the circumstances were, but it's kind of one of the reasons why he hasn't been back on the show since like season 3, even though Slade / Deathstroke is such a big, he's a pretty big DC villain, hence why he's basically being chosen as the main villain of the standalone, the Batman movie for the DCEU. But nevertheless, that's why he was silent and everything. But it's just like, you see everyone lined up, and you also have Malcolm too, which Thea kind of changes her mind at the end, because it was like, she told Ollie, she's like, I'm not going to leave my family behind again. And it's like, yeah, these people, it's nice, this is a fake reality and everything. It's like, she has everything, but at the same time, it's not going to matter if her brother's not there. It's like, yeah, because at the end of the day, these people are fake. They're not the real mom, they're not the real dad, but you are the real Oliver. So I'm gonna go with you because you're my family, and I'm not going to lose my family again. So, but it was like a amazing showdown. It was so good. Even that slow-mo where you have like Oliver kind of grabbing Slade and kind of flipping him. It's just like, that's so sick. And you have Thea going up against Malcolm, like kicking his ass and then like stabbing the sword into the ground. Then she fires the arrow towards Sarah. Sarah grabs it, stabs Dark. Thea grabs the bow, gives it to Oliver. Oliver takes the arrow that he got caught in his shoulder, which is just like, man, Oliver really shook that off. Took the arrow to an arm and just pulled it out, and went to fight Slade with it, but takes that arrow and it shoots him in the eye. I didn't catch which eye. It looked like it was an eye shot, so I was like, obviously it had to be the same eye that he shot Slade back in Lian Yu. Side note too, like, I was, once again, another thing I almost forgot, I really like the opening where it was kind of flashing towards all the different arrowheads that had been part of the opening title card throughout the seasons. I thought that was pretty nifty. But just like, overall, it's just like a little kick-ass little scene, dude. It was nice. Just bringing it up again, it's just like, that was just kind of like the suckiest thing, is like, to have that kind of taunted towards you. It's like, But like I said, it's so, I think they did that on purpose. That was like very well designed. Like the whole thing last episode about Flash, like the whole Flashpoint situation and what, Oliver said. And now he got that opportunity this time. And he kind of did the same thing Barry did. He turned away from it because it's like, for Barry, he turned away for similar but yet different reasons, obviously. But, it more so than anything, it inspired Oliver to realize, that he has so much left to fight for, I guess. It's like, even though those people, he has to keep fighting not just for himself, but for all the people that are gone now, too, which include Tommy, his mom, his dad. Roy's not dead, but he's one of the people, that kind of pushed for him, as well as Laurel. Even, Felicity being a big motivator is the reason why he keeps going forward. I mean, because also this reality was him. Because at the beginning, like, that whole thing was happening, I was like, oh, man. I was like, oh, like, is this kind of like before they were taken or something? It's like, I was wondering, I was like, oh, the person in shower, Susan, and it turned out to be Laura. I was like, wait, what? I was like, all right, they're screwing with their heads, aren't they? And it's like, yep, they were, so. An interesting thing, too, to note, this is like the first Arrow episode without a flashback, isn't it? That's why I was kind of wondering, at the same time, I was also thinking, it's like, is this some kind of flashback? I was like, but he has short hair and he's running. So that's why I was kind of pushing for the Susan route, but it's like, I think this is actually the first episode without a flashback. I mean, because I guess the main focus is the whole alien situation, so it's like, why? Because, every episode is kind of like I said, like I talked about the Flash episode, like, even though it's not like a standalone episode, there's stuff from it that Barry can take away from it. The fact is that everyone now has a knowledge of like, oh yeah, Barry basically screwed over the timeline and everything like that. But when they were on the ship and they were that little escape pod ship and escaping, I was like, oh man, Supergirl can come and save you. And I was like, oh, right. She can't breathe in outer space, which I bring it up again. I brought it up like during the season 1 finale and I'm bringing it up again. It's like, I thought Kryptonians could breathe in space. Wasn't maybe because I always like, I think I've referenced it then and I'll reference it now. It's like the whole 90s Superman cartoon. He had to wear a special suit to breathe in air, didn't he? I felt like he didn't have to, like, or is that just the continuity we're going with that basically they can't breathe in space? I thought Kryptonians could, but it's like, I mean, I guess maybe if they hold their breath long enough, they could be fine if they fly fast enough. But it's like, now that I think about it, it's like I don't know if I'm remembering wrong because it's been a long time since I've had any. Because that was never a thing. I think even in Smallville, that never really happened. Really, him flying into outer space. Maybe he did, but maybe anytime he flew into outer space, maybe it was never really past the Earth's atmosphere, so maybe he never had to worry about. I don't remember. I feel like he did, but like I said, maybe he never broke through the atmosphere, so it was never an issue. So I mean, I don't know. Just talking up to that. Obviously, much like the Flash situation, it seems like this episode was more like, I don't have a problem with it. Like, I like the fact that it doesn't have to be like all this full of action and bam fights and stuff like that. I'm fine with like some character development and the stories because I really like what they've done, from Supergirl to Flash to this episode, which I mean, granted, because I brought it up again, like to me, out of every episode, Supergirl is the most like standalone-ish. I still believe that. And the reason why I'm able to remember that so vividly is just because I was editing the other two today too. So, but I remember that so, I still believe that because it's like, it's the most standalone-ish because it's like the whole crossover thing was kind of tacked on at the end. Obviously it popped up here and there throughout the episode, but it wasn't really pushed on until the very end of the episode. So to me, it was the most that, but at the same time, the other episodes play a part of like, because I talked about with the Supergirl and Flash when it seemed like only Supergirl kind of walked away with some kind of like difference maybe after the crossover, because obviously Barry and Oliver have kind of gained some differences after their crossover events, but it's like this one, it does seem like a lot of people are going to carry a lot of stuff away from these crossovers because these crossovers aren't just about like this alien threat, it's also about the stuff they're naturally dealing with. For Oliver, like in this episode, it's like dealing with like looking at the life he could have had and like having to turn away from it because it's like he still has a job to do, he still has people to protect, he still has people that need him around. So, and at the same time, it was awesome though that it was Nate who ended up showing up to kind of bring everyone together, save everyone, just like, and having everyone that hasn't experienced the shit be like, oh, it's so amazing to have Diggle and Thea, which I totally forgot to bring that up back in the Flash episode. It's like Thea's here only. She literally came out of retirement because it's like, yeah, it's like even Oliver brought it up last time. So like, why? I thought you were retired. She's like, yeah, but aliens. It's like, what? That's what brings you out of retirement. It's like, hey, I'm not going to judge you. You do your thing, Thea. Still happy to have you aboard and everything. So it's like, it's nice to see Diggle and Thea be shocked. I mean, even Oliver himself is kind of shocked about the whole situation, being like, man, this is a pretty sweet getup, like this whole the Wave Rider and everything. So even he's shocked, but I guess it's kind of like, I guess for him, it's not that big of a shock. So what we ended up finding out at the end of the episode is that apparently the whole situation was about getting information from them. Apparently it was because out of the group that was there, they're the only normal humans. Everyone else either has powers or is a meta in some shape or form. I guess, you know, obviously they ended up getting Mick away in time, but the others that were kind of taken, so... It does seem like they pulled some information from Ray's brain because he is the smartest one. So I guess they're trying, whatever the weapon is that they're building is going to go down next episode. So super excited. I couldn't help it. I caught some glimpses. I think the next episode, the Legends of Tomorrow aspect is going to be the most action heavy aspect because I think it's really going to go down. And I get the feeling we're going to finally have everyone together, because obviously before now we didn't have Nate and Amaya, which is going to be very interesting when Oliver and her meet. That was kind of going in the back of my mind. Obviously we didn't see her in this episode. I'm sure we're going to see her next episode because like he knows the current day Vixen, so he's going to be like, I know a Vixen. It's like, oh, you must be your grandmother and stuff like that. Maybe he'll bring up some questions like, oh, what my granddaughter's like and whatnot, because I know that Nate's going to be a part of it because, like, you know, obviously last week I saw that, was it last week or the week before last, I've kept seeing the previews with him in his Citizen Steel outfit, or just Steel uniform. So that's going to be interesting. Also curious, will Ray have his suit ready? Because, I forgot it is ready. I'm stupid. It was literally in the last episode when they were training against Supergirl and everything, so... I say I've been saying like, oh, these episodes aren't that action packed, but it's like when you look in retrospect, it's like last week's episode. I mean, not last week. Yesterday's Flash episode had quite a bit of action in it too. So it's like I can't really say that. So, but nevertheless, like I said, it's not just the only thing that matters. It's just like I like the stories and I like the character developments and just the things that are going through. It's one of the reasons why I love these shows so much. Granted, action helps too, just because, you know, it's awesome. Who doesn't love action? But at the same time, it's like I like these characters and I like to see the stuff they end up going through. Kind of a side note, I might reiterate it during the, well, never mind. It's not. Hopefully I'll remember it. If so, I'll just add it to the Legends aspect of things. So all I can say is I'm super excited to see what goes down in the Legends thing. And since I am talking about that, how about you take us home with the conclusion to the 4-night event, Future Michael, and tell us what went down in Legends of Tomorrow. Thank you, Past Michael. I will. And not just thanks to you, thanks to Tuesday Night Michael, well, the Michael that watched The Flash, as well as the Michael that watched Supergirl. Thank you all for doing your part in this whole situation. I promise you this would be the last time I do this bit. I've been thinking about this bit would have been a lot stronger if I'd been recording video with it, so it would have been a little more concrete and have more of an impact of seeing like, oh yeah, these were recorded at different times. But nevertheless, you know, I promise this will be the last time, because it's the night that the crossover event comes to an end. And with that, I'm going to talk about Legends of Tomorrow's part in all of this. So some very interesting things went down. Obviously, well, okay. I'm trying to figure out where to start. Okay. For one, you end up finding out why the Dominators actually came to Earth. And apparently the reason why they came to Earth is specifically because of metahumans. That's not what I was picking up from last night's episode of Arrow, but then I guess it kind of makes sense why they chose more humanish people. Like, I thought it was just like, oh, defenses to humans. It's like they were trying to learn about humans, like regular humans, as they might have some comprehension of metahumans, because they actually fear metahumans, because the whole point is to judge whether or not metahumans are a threat, because essentially they've come across other planets, I guess, in the universe, galaxy, whatever the case may be, and it's like even on their planet, because powers kind of get out of control, and they're trying to determine whether or not humans, metas, are a danger. Because essentially the guy that captured him is the same old guy that we met like during the whole talk with the president back in the Flash episode being like, there was that grumpy guy that was telling Lila like, oh, like she should be following his lead. I'm like, why is this guy such an asshole? And then you meet the guy in 1951. I was like, and he's tranking them and he's kind of torturing an alien and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm not too surprised. It's like you're kind of a secret government organization. You're kind of doing some shady stuff. So it's like, man, this guy's being an asshole. Then that old guy appears again in this episode. I'm like, why is he being an asshole? Oh, great, because the guy in 1951 and the dude in 2016 are actually the same dude. No wonder they're assholes. But essentially, the aliens are afraid of metahumans because of what they can do. So it's like, you see the guy that tortured the Dominator that Cisco and them rescued. He's like, you see him, and it's like, could you imagine him if he somehow miraculously got powers? Because that isn't something that hasn't come up, and I'm surprised with like series like this where it's like, oh, superpowers are a thing. You would think the government would be working on a means of making their own. I'm surprised that hasn't popped up in Well, I'm sure. I mean, to certain degrees it has because of Cadmus and everything. So it has popped in Supergirl, but it hasn't necessarily popped up in the Flash though. But you know, I'm kind of get to that a little bit later on, I guess. But it's like you understand their point. I mean, because really this all started because it's like, oh yeah, we want Barry Allen, because even old dude knows about Barry because it's like, you know, government knows a lot more than they're willing to admit. But they've kind of let him do his own thing, and they're telling Barry like, oh yeah, this is all happening because of you. It's like, wait, what? It's like, because you went back in time. Like, wait, you know my identity. Wait, you know about Flashpoint? What? Like, the government really knows their stuff, don't they? It's like, holy crap. It seems like Barry's been kind of left to his devices, but it seems like with this whole situation with all superhero related stuff, it's like they know. Probably even stuff dealing with the legends. Like, it's probably not just Nate who knows about the changes to history. Probably have the government doing it too. I mean, if they're able to remember. It takes a little while for time to kind of solidify. So maybe they've noticed the weirdness. I don't know. Like, I can't really explain how that whole situation works where like Nate could remember the changes and notice the changes, but no one else could. Not the point. I mean, well, it kind of is the point, but the fact of the matter is they brought it up. It's like, Barry, you basically, it wasn't, because for Barry, it's not just about, oh man, I ruined the lives of people around me, my friends and family. I've actually done it to the universe, because apparently the Dominators felt the effects, because it's like, hey, you knocked, the balance out of the universe. That's why the Dominators never actually said specifically what it was that Barry did that they were able to notice. Like, that's something we never really got an answer to. What was so different? What was off kilter in the universe that people were able to notice? Like, oh, what's going on here? And were able to trace it back to Barry. That is the question. I mean, because I brought it up before, like, I kind of went off on a tangent in one episode. I mean, because this is kind of more evident of it. It's like, how scary, not just Barry, but speedsters in general. Like I said before the show, I never really realized just how scary speedsters can be. I mean, technically, speedsters have the potential to destroy the universe. And when you look at someone with that kind of capabilities, it's like, man, that's deadly. That's like, holy crap. Like, not only could you destroy worlds, you could destroy an entire universe like that. So I do understand the concern. So, because every time Barry, the whole point Jay was getting across, like every time he goes back in time, he's like chipping away at kind of like the timeline as well as kind of the universe. He's kind of cracking it a little bit. So, but like I said, it's like, how did they know it? How did it? I don't know. Because I brought that up before. It's like, you can't blame Barry for this whole invasion. It's like, I guess technically you can. I mean, but at the same time, it's like, technically you can't, because actually it's kind of possibly Cisco's fault. Because Cisco's the one that kind of told the team, like, hey, we need to, actually save the Dominator. We can't leave him here, because it's like, what kind of heroes would that make us be if we leave him here? And then, he ended up reporting back to the others. So Cisco technically made this happen because, like, over this, 50 some years, well, no, 65 years to be exact, they've been kind of studying not just humans, just the metahumans in general, because it's like they've seen how scary power, I guess, witnessing everything that they were able to do, what Amaya could do, what Nate could do. It was like, oh, I've seen what they can do. Now let's keep an eye on these humans and see. And the fact is, it's like subsequently since then, there's been a multitude of other metas popping up since then. So it kind of makes sense to be like, okay, humans are a little dangerous. And once again, it's like, if they're able to replicate those powers, you have evil people like that douchebag, and it's like, you give him superpowers, there's no telling what he could do, what kind of, not only what it would mean for the planet, it mean for the universe, because like they said, they've seen similar things like that on other planets, that people get powers, and it brings about, war to other planets because they'd be like, oh, they get so foolhardy, they get so caught up in like, hey, we got powers and everything and try to conquer other worlds. And that's another thing too, like taking Cisco, for example, because I remember people talk about it, even like his second, his Earth 2, I don't know what his Earth 2 counterpart was basically like, you don't realize how powerful you are. Because the fact is, I've heard people kind of discuss like Cisco's powers that if he really tried, he's like actually one of the, if not the most powerful metahuman in existence with his powers. I mean, because when you think about it, like he has kind of like an almost omnipotent power. Like he's able to kind of vibe the future, the past, present, locate things and people. And also the whole breach things. He's literally tearing a hole into another dimension. Like he's able to rip open. So it's like, really? Cisco has a power to rip apart reality, and it's like you don't really think about it, but it's like, yeah, that's what he could be capable of if he pushed his powers. He could be the most deadliest meta out there. So it's like that's another example of a power you don't want getting out there in other people's hands. So Barry was kind of making a decision. He's like, oh, I'm gonna turn myself in. But then he had someone, even like everyone's like, no, don't do that, Barry. That's not a good decision. But even had Cisco kind of looking at things a little differently, because it's like he's kind of blamed Barry this entire time, and he finally looks at himself. He's like, oh, this is kind of our fault because we went back and saved that Dominator. He's like, basically we're almost bringing the apocalypse to Earth because of something we did. I went back in time and changed something, and this entire time I've been pissed at Barry. He was doing what he thought was right. Yes, it might have been a selfish thing, but he was trying to do a good thing. And the same thing can be said about Cisco. Yeah, and you could argue, like, playing devil's advocate, Cisco's whole situation is a little more selfless than the whole situation with Barry. Barry's, when you look at it, there's no doubt about it, it was a very selfish act. And it's just like, man, everyone just like I feel so bad for Barry, because this is the season of just like, yeah, Barry, like everyone's telling him, like, ease up on yourself, Barry. But at the same time, he also has like other people beat the smack out of him. I mean, like, you changed the past, you screwed everything up, it's all your fault, Barry, kind of situation. So, I mean, it seems like things might be getting better between him and Cisco. It seems like they're on good terms now. So, I mean, because, even had Felicity telling him, it's like, Barry didn't kill your brother. He's like, yes, I know he didn't kill Dante, but he played a role in making the things that happen. So it's, there was even that weird moment earlier in the episode where Oliver kind of had this thing with Kara where he's telling her to kind of stand back, and Kara's like, wait, what? Because basically he's trying to handle the situation, because if he has Kara with him, he feels like he'll be a little off kilter, because basically it's like when Oliver started all of this, it was like, hey, regular guys with some training, sure, they're assassins, have, some martial arts skills, sure. Then it's like metahumans. Okay, this is weird, but okay, I've taken some time, I've gotten used to it, and now it's like aliens exist. It's like his whole world kind of flipped upside down. So it's like I guess in his mind he was like worried that having Kara by his side would kind of take him off. His reasoning, I won't lie to you, I don't understand it, because it's like, she is your powerhouse. Literally no one on this team can touch her, which I love Ray's joke. Well, Ray and Felicity's joke later on, because Felicity's like, it's almost like looking in a mirror. It's like, I never actually thought about it till I see you two next to each other. You are kind of similar. Just in the fact is the hair, the glasses, it's just, even their attire is kind of similar in certain degrees. And it's like, I never really thought about that. And then you even had Ray making a joke. It's like, she kind of reminds me of my cousin. I was just like, I was like, okay, of course you had to slip that in there. To anyone that isn't familiar, who doesn't, didn't catch that. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people did, but just in case you didn't, Brendan Routh played Superman in the, 2006 movie Superman Returns, wasn't that it? Yeah. And so he was Superman, so I guess that is kind of a slight reference to that. So that was pretty cool. And even have like freaking Mick, like when Kara's being sent off later at the end of the episode, being like, because Kara's got a device that lets her kind of cross the breaches when she wants to, in case she needs help from them, or needs to come over and help them. And it's like, he's like, call sometime. It's just like, hey, Skirt, make sure you call, or something like that. It's just like, love you, Mick. Always being Mr. Chivalrous and helpful. Always, just always. In this episode, I didn't get exactly what I wanted. I wanted everyone that, because obviously I wasn't going to get everyone from Supergirl. The only person we sadly got from Supergirl is Supergirl. But still, we didn't even get all of Team Arrow. We got most of Team Arrow, but not all of it, because most of Team Arrow was kind of allocated to just the Arrow episode. Just like, some of Team Flash was only in Flash. So it makes sense, because everyone was kind of allocated to the show. A lot of the team is allocated to the show that they're on, because even Thea wasn't in this episode. She was kind of returned home after everything they went through. But still, it doesn't change the fact that this whole thing, like, I guess, this is me still talking about Legends, but everything as a whole is so good. It's like I got Justice League live action. I mean, yes, we have the DCEU, but here at this moment, it's like, obviously it's not like the Justice League you expect, because it's like there's no Batman, but you have your, like, you just have everything. It's like, and what I find most fascinating about this group of superheroes is that it's not A-listers. Like, because even DJ from SourceFed Nerd was like, yeah, Ragman is like a Z-list character. It's like, he's a very obscure character. It's like, who knows Ragman? Same thing kind of for like Wild Dog. They're kind of like throwaway characters, but it's like you took some characters from like deep in some DC stuff and pulled them to the surface and put them on like mainstream television. And it's like, that's amazing. Because like literally out of all the characters there's only like 3 characters I know. Supergirl, Oliver / Green Arrow, and Flash. That's it. Everyone else is kind of like, I don't really know you. Like, a lot of those people are people I learned about. Like I said, I never knew that much about Green Arrow and Flash, but I had ideas about them. Everyone else in the background is people I know from these shows. And that's just what's so mind-blowing about it. It's like, it may not be the Justice League some people might have wanted or whatever, but it's still a Justice League in a sense to me, and it was so good. Just seeing everyone just standing there like striker poses. I mean, them going all out against the Dominators. It was just so sick. You got everyone like fighting. You got Barry zipping around the whole place, putting those devices on everyone. And I love Felicity's line of just being like, this looks like a job for Supergirl. And Barry's like, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Felicity. She's like, no, Barry, come on. I mean, this is a job for you and her, like, for Supergirl and the Flash. And it's like, nice save. It's like, it's understandable, Felicity. I get it. Supergirl is pretty awesome. Like, you can't deny it. I mean, she's like super badass. So it's understandable that you kind of forget about Barry to a certain extent, because it's like, let's face it, there's literally no one on this earth that can stop her. She's like, that's why I'm kind of like, that's why I didn't really understand the whole Oliver situation. It's like, if she wanted to, she could like seriously kick some ass. But I guess the point is to kind of like, hey, we don't want to show Supergirl as being too OP, because we don't want her to seem like she's leagues out of the way. Side note, another thing kind of crossing the back of my mind, like I know I'm rambling on, going on these different tangents, is a whole conversation about, because that was a constant thing, like who's faster, Superman or Flash? There was even the whole thing between them, like on how to get Barry back to Earth 1 during the whole like original crossover between Supergirl and the Flash. To me, I think when you break it down, Barry is faster. I know there was references of like him in the comic books, like letting Superman win on some occasions, but I think when I actually think about it, it's like, well, Barry can legitimately travel back in time, so it means he's moving super fast. He's moving so fast he can literally punch a hole in time. So it's like he kind of because I've yet to see. I mean, you have those certain Superman movies that kind of reference the fact that he kind of reversed time, but kind of doing what Barry does. I've yet to see Clark or Kara do that, so that's why I'm kind of thinking like Barry's kind of like faster anyway. I mean, granted, even above that, when you look at Savitar, you're kind of like, well, Barry's not even the fastest, because Savitar, like, he's out-leagued with Savitar, and just, nevertheless, it was just a kick-ass moment all around. The fact of the matter is the Dominators are gone for now, but who's to say they aren't going to come back? Because something I was wondering, because that guy was such a douchebag, being like, oh yeah, metas are a problem. It's not just the Dominators that had a problem with it, was also him. Obviously, like, Kara kind of talked to the president, which I love the joke between Mick and Sarah being like, isn't me or is the president hot? And then, yeah, Sarah checking her out. Yeah, she's hot. It's just like, but anyway, like, Kara was like, hey, I talked to the president about like the DEO on my planet handling the whole situation about aliens, kind of brought it up to her and basically told her to kind of demote you to like Alaska or something like that. It just like, it was almost like Kara with a smile on her face kind of gave him the middle fingers at the same time. Like that smile was like 2 middle fingers up, and I loved it. But, because that was something I was wondering too. Like, that hasn't necessarily been a storyline with this whole. Because it kind of typically happens with stuff with superpowers. As you always have the problem where it's like there's people for people with superpowers and then people against them. Like, I don't think that's ever like. Maybe it hasn't. I'm just not remembering any clear examples. I mean, obviously your current example is Julian, but he's like the only one that's very anti-metas. I mean, I guess granted because you have the hero like the Flash around, but it's like more often than not, it's just more people are more positive towards metas. It's like, yeah, there's some bad guys, but we also have good guys. We have our Central City has like their dedicated hero Flash, so and it exists to a certain extent on Supergirl, so I'm guessing that's why. I mean, it hasn't reached that point where it's such a big divide amongst humanity. It hasn't turned as ugly as it could have. Who's to say it won't turn ugly later on in the season? But for now, it seems like everything's kind of like, yes, you have Cadmus and you have some people kind of agreeing with them, but it hasn't turned into an all-around hate crime type of situation, only like a form of racism. To a certain degree, prejudice, yes. Racism, 100%, not quite. At least, like I said, to this point. Like, you still have people like Cadmus being very racist, being like, aliens need to get the hell off our planet, they're dangerous, yada, yada, yada. So I guess because that storyline exists on Supergirl, they're not really trying to do that on Flash as well. I mean, I guess because another reason is that kind of take you down a dark path, storyline wise. It just, I mean, the allegories and metaphors. I mean, they're already there on Supergirl, so it's already kind of going down that route. Not that that's a bad thing, to take that, because it's a very serious problem and kind of, obviously creating an allegory, like I said, metaphor for it in Supergirl, obviously. But I don't know, maybe. I don't know. It doesn't seem like nevertheless, it doesn't seem like something they're setting up on the Flash. Obviously, yes, it's something on Supergirl. So, like, my point is maybe that's why they're not doing it on the Flash. Because I feel like that'd be a problem, especially because he has such a problem with it. And who's to say he's the only one? And once again, it's just like, you don't realize how much the government really knows, because it's never really come up, because it's just like, he knows Barry's identity. He's like, yeah, Barry. It's like, how the hell does he know about that? How the hell does he know about Flashpoint? It's like, I'm guessing I'm wondering, is that going to be something that kind of carries over into the other shows? And since I'm talking about that right now, I will let you know, because I was curious about it, because I saw, yesterday I ended up catching peeks at the next episode of Flash, which is the mid-season finale. And it seems like, because I ended up catching part of Arrows, and I caught the tail end of Legends, so I would assume Supergirl's the same way too. So it seems like next week is going to be all of the mid-season finales. So it's going to be interesting to see what goes down. I won't go into details about what. I'm sure you could end up looking them up if you're very curious, but it's just, just for spoilers' sakes, I won't really talk about it. Like I said, overall, I really love this. It's like, it gets me super excited. Like, it's a dream come true. It's just the coolest thing. And it just makes you wonder, what will they do next time? Maybe by then it's like we can actually get everybody like on one thing, like, bring everyone on to one show. I'm sure, like, even as it is now, we will probably get more crossovers in the future, probably the sense of like one or two characters from one show popping up on someone else's. Like, for instance, like, maybe, because since we're talking about the whole Barry from 2056, I kind of get the feeling that, hey, we might run into him in Legends or something like that. I think that was kind of the whole thing, or maybe people were kind of hoping for that. I don't know if that's something that's been confirmed or not, but that's one example. So I'm kind of letting it slip. There was other storyline elements, obviously, too. Like, for instance, you had the whole situation with Stein. I was trying to figure that whole situation out. It's like his daughter, I didn't really catch that, but now it kind of makes sense now that Stein says it. But the whole situation with the daughter isn't a Flashpoint thing. It's a him thing. When he was talking to his younger self, he kind of changed time, and him and Clarissa ended up having a daughter. Her name's Lily, right? I mean, I don't know if I caught that right or not. But essentially, she's a very smart girl. But she was kind of picking up the signs that, like, okay, like, Dad's keeping his distance. He's being a little weird around me. I mean, she's actually the one that helped Stein kind of figure out the whole situation about, trying to stop the Dominators. But he talks to Caitlin about it, and he's kind of like, I have to get rid of her. And it's like, what are we talking about? She's your daughter. It's like, she's not my daughter. Like, she didn't exist until that. She's like a time aberration, meaning I have to go back in time. It's like, unlike Barry, I have the luxury of fixing my mistake. For him, it's like just going back and telling his younger self not to do that. So I mean, but even in that, still, I guess the changes he's making aren't like I don't know. Because even then, it's still, I feel like there'll still be ramifications for it. Like they've yet to kind of experience the same problems. Like, because I guess their changes to the timeline are very small. I guess Barry changed something that basically rewrote the world, I guess you could look at, because it's like, because of his mom being dead, because of his mom being killed by Eobard, it led to him becoming the Flash and just kind of led to a lot of things playing out. Like, obviously things played out a little differently in Flashpoint. Like I said, we still never found out fully. I wonder if that's something we might actually get to learn as the season progresses. It's like, oh yeah, we never actually got to see the world because of Flashpoint, but now you actually do. Like, you're going to learn things that even Barry himself didn't know. Or maybe it's stuff that Barry's kind of kept it in because it's like, well, it never pertained to anything. I mean, because I'm sure Barry really only took the notices that were pertinent to his life. So, but at the end of it, Stein does, like, he looks at her, he's talking to her and everything, and he even says it. He's like, I think for the first time, I'm seeing you. Meaning, he's like, you're not just a problem that needs to be fixed. He's like, you are my daughter. And it's like, how could I ever think to just kind of erase you like that? It's like, no. And so he's talking to Jackson. He's like, we can't tell them about this. And it's like, we're fighting time, aberrations. And it's like, you want to keep her? And he's like, I do, because she's my daughter, and he doesn't want to change anything. The question is, because she doesn't know, and he's kind of kept her in the dark about it, it's like, what would she do? Would there ever be a moment where Stein tells her, like, okay, I'm sorry, or she finds out on her own that, like, Stein did that basically she didn't exist, and it's like, maybe the others end up finding out, and they start talking about it around Stein, and his daughter ends up overhearing the fact that she doesn't exist, and that kind of turns ugly. I don't know. It makes you wonder, would he even tell Clarissa about it? I don't know. He probably doesn't want to take the chances. So the only person that knows is Jax. So that's another secret they're keeping. But as we've seen, secrets don't stay secret for long, because at this point it's like, yo, you kept that secret long enough, and now it's like, it's out. Now, once again, I'm bringing it up though, that I don't think this was necessarily the war future Barry might have been talking about. I still feel like it was something else entirely. And once again, bringing up the Dominators, I feel like there's going to be more of, like, I'd like this, whether it's going to be another crossover thing or whether it's just going to be a side thing. I mean, because I doubt they're going to pop up on Supergirl. I don't think they're an issue on Supergirl. I mean, because really the only people of their caliber on Earth 38 is just Kara and Clark. So, and side note, how sick was that thing? Like, he's done it before, but the whole, like, Firestorm transmuting that thing, like, to me, every time he does that, it just makes me think Full Metal Alchemist. Like, I just thought about it, it's like, shit, turning something into something else. It's just the whole, I mean, really, it's not the same thing as equivalent exchange, but still, the whole process makes me think of it. Just him touching his hands like that just makes me think of someone performing alchemy from Full Metal. But nevertheless, it's so sick, and he's just doing that and just flaming up, and then like the entire bomb turns into water. A freaking bomb meant to wipe out metahumans. It would have killed other people too, but it was mainly designed to wipe out metahumans. It's supposed to be strong enough to kill metas, and that was interesting. I just get the feeling like, because of the whole situation, especially because that one particular Dominator and Cisco kind of bonded to a certain extent. He was kind of the main one that kind of brought this all upon them. So it does make you wonder, is he the leader, or did he kind of become the leader, or did he just kind of give out the idea? Because we never actually met a leader amongst the Dominators. They might all have been just foot soldiers and maybe never met the leader. So maybe it's something in a future crossover event. Maybe it's something only in the Flash, like because of the connection him and Cisco had, that ends up becoming a thing. Who knows? Like I said, for right now, that doesn't seem to be the focus of everyone's individual stuff from the little bit I've seen, because everyone's kind of going back to their issues at hand. Next week's episodes are going to be crazy, and I'm super excited to see what this goes down. I'm so happy this happened. I'm so giddy. It's like I'm already waiting for the next one. I hope it works. There is a next one, because really it all comes down to whether or not, these shows kind of do well, which I don't know. I think they're doing decent well. I think especially Supergirl. I think Supergirl is doing, like, I don't know logistic wise, but I feel like Supergirl, maybe ratings wise or, review wise, I think might be doing better than any other show. I don't know that for sure. But it's just like, I hope these shows stay around as long as possible. Because the thing is, because they're so heavily intertwined, it does make you think, like, when one show goes, I don't even want to go down that route. I just want to sit here and just think positively. I know I've been talking for so long, but it's just like, it was just, to me, a good episode. Just all together is so good. Hopefully, probably sometime in the future, I'm just going to watch it all back to back. I'll probably do it recently, just to kind of get a more like, hey, enjoy it all at once. Because I'm sure it's even different. It's a different viewing experience seeing it all at once too. So this officially brings the Heroes versus Alien quote unquote review to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed everything like I did. It was just so good, so good. It was everything that I want. It wasn't the huge battle I was kind of expecting it to be, but like I said, before, it's like, I'm fine with there not being 100, like, oh, it's just like the craziest action ever. I do like the characters. I like story development. I just like the stories they're telling altogether. It's just like, it's very interesting to me. Side note too, I know some people have a problem with Nate's whole steel suit. Personally, I don't have a problem with it. I think it looks pretty badass. But hey, that's just me. I don't know. I don't nitpick over stuff like that. I think it's a pretty cool looking suit, especially like because it's like, it has to kind of fit the style of the show a little bit too. So obviously they had to make some modifications to it. I think design, like color scheme wise, obviously it's kind of the same from his outfit from the comic books, but obviously it's more like armorish. It's more designed after the Atom suit, but still, nevertheless. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I guess I will be seeing you guys next week with obviously everything returning to its normal schedule, at least for a little while, because I think the last, because like I said, winter break's coming, so everything's kind of going to be taking a break soon. But I do hope you guys enjoyed it. Till the next time we meet, do be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye. I will admit, kind of tagging this on at the end because I'm thinking about it. I had a lot of fun doing it like this. I kept making complaints about the little stupid bit of transitioning it over like that. I mean, obviously in the future, if I did something like this, I wouldn't make that so noticeable. I'd just be like, hey, and now moving on to this, and that. But still, I think it was a lot of fun. So I still haven't 100% decided whether I'll do something like this in the future with everything or not. But like I said, it was still a fun experience, and I'm glad I did it. This is going on long enough, and I'm just going to end it there. So once again, goodbye.